If you've been caring a lot, performing fine, and privately wondering why you can't fully exhale, you're in the right place. Today's conversation is going to land your body, not just your mind. So, welcome back to the Awakening Potential Show. This is a place where ordinary softens and the extraordinary is allowed to emerge. I'm Karen Rudolf, your host, and this show is for women who've carried a lot, learning a lot and quietly knowing there's so much more to do, but more so to remember. So here we talk about awakening, not just as a concept, rather as a lived experience through real stories, embodied wisdom, conversations that meet life where it actually is. And this is where the sassy confidence meets classy wisdom and badassy brilliance gets to be expressed without apology. So take a breath, let your shoulders drop, and give yourself permission to fully be here. So let's begin. And today I'm really honored to share the space with someone whose journey reflects, excuse me, I thought I put that on hold. So my apologies for the interruption.
That's
I
okay.
absolutely always do that first and foremost. Life in the real world. Oh, as I was saying, my guest is Rachel Radway, who is well known as a CEO, leadership and executive coach, and the author of her book, Perspective Insights for Leadership, who are more deeply in the process of thinking deeply and thinking differently,
So
which is
it's actually,
perceptive. Forgive
yeah,
me.
that's
The
okay.
call threw me off. It was
That's okay. It's
Rachel's also a speaker whose specialty is neurodivergence and how common and misunderstood it truly is, and it really is, especially for smart high achievers, and really the importance of how to embrace and leverage the gifts, and it is a gift each one of us have, rather than focusing on the challenge. I want to give a warmer welcome to Rachel Radway. Welcome. My
thank
apologies
you
for
for
that interruption at the beginning.
no worries. And thank you so much for having me, Karen.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here. I always like to go back in time and begin at the beginning, what you played with and things like that that might be related to what you're doing today. Is there such a thing?
Interesting. I think I always had a very rich inner world and was always creative. I was making things with my hands from when I could hold things in my hands.
Right.
And I am still, although I haven't felt particularly creative in the arts and design sense for a while because I've been focused on other things, but that's still very much a part of me. And that deep inner world, I think, is very much an important part of who I am.
All right, absolutely. So give us a little backstory if you would. Obviously, you started as a kid and you worked your way up. What's your background? What have you?
Sure. So I spent, well, initially I thought when I was about 13 or 14 and people asked me what I wanted to do when I grew up, my answer was I wanted to find a company that would pay me to live in every country in the world so that I could learn every language in the world
Love it.
and help the world communicate more effectively with each other. And interestingly, I hadn't thought about that for a long time until someone asked me a similar question in another interview. And I now tell the story on my website, but I've actually lived in 8 different countries outside of the US, and I have studied 9 languages. And I do not speak them fluently, so I never quite got to that childhood dream. But I care very deeply about communication and helping other people communicate. And so I spent a little over 25 years in the corporate world in many different roles, but a lot of them were communication or communications related. I also did some operations work, and I've worked in many different industries and both nonprofit and for profit. And then in about 2014, I was so burned out. Although I didn't have the language for it at the time, I didn't really understand what was happening to me. I just knew that I was kind of non-functional, that I ended up having to quit my job, sell my home, and move to rural Peru to find the time and the space that I needed to start my recovery journey, which ended up taking several years. And when I returned to the States, finally, I really had to think a lot more about what I wanted and what I had been doing that had caused the burnout and how I wanted to live my life differently from that point on. And so I actually did end up going back into corporate, even though I didn't want to. That was reality at the time. But a few years later, after another round of layoffs, because I had gone through many in all of my times in corporate, I decided to do something I had wanted to do for more than 10 years, which was become a coach. So I went and got my training and got my certification, and I started my coaching business.
I love
And
that.
I
I
work,
just want to pause for a second because you're
sure.
getting ahead of yourself. And I just want to, for the listening audience, right, it's all about awakening potential in perhaps what they're up to. And I really want to not skip over the fact that you had a dream. You wanted to speak in countries all around the world and do communication, which is near and dear to my heart as well. And whether you were in 9 countries or 2 countries, you were fulfilling a dream. So it's possible. Anything is possible when you set your intention, right? Number one. Number two, I heard you say you burnt out.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit more about that before you skip on to everything else, because there are a lot of people who are now working in corporate in a listening audience that might be burning out and don't know what the signs and symptoms are, number one. And number
Mhm.
two, how to even attempt to recover from that. I do a lot of neuroscience myself, and I bring that aspect into it. But I'd love to hear from your perspective what that looked like for you and how you got into recovery or recovered.
Absolutely. This is like you, this is something I'm really passionate about supporting people in, helping them prevent it in the first place.
Absolutely.
Like a lot of my clients, I always put 150% of myself into everything I did. And I did not have, I really was not familiar with the concept of boundaries. I never said no. I always took more on. I always put everything before my own well-being.
Mhm.
And what it looked like, as I mentioned, it was 2014, and I wasn't on social media then, and people weren't talking about burnout the same way that they are now. So it really
Right.
wasn't a concept that I understood. What I knew was I was constantly exhausted. I had brain fog. I had some episodes of chronic pain, which were not new to me, but definitely I was having more of it, and it was more constant. Looking back, two of the things that stand out now most prominently about how I was at the time were I lost my sense of humor and I lost my empathy. And my sense of empathy is very strong. I really didn't have it. I was completely impatient with everything and everyone. I was very cynical. And I had used to laugh all the time, even in that same job earlier on. I remember groups of us would sit in one of our parts of the office and just laugh all the time. By the time that I realized that I had to leave, I was not laughing at anything. Nothing was funny anymore.
Was
So
that
it
part of
was,
being, because I really want to interject now and then, just if you would, so this way maybe
sure.
we can bring out some highlights for the listening audience to perhaps see themselves in as well. Would
Yeah.
you say that was a result of also people pleasing and not having boundaries, to not know what to say, to perhaps, I don't want to say save yourself because it's not a matter of saving, it's a matter of protecting yourself from the burnout. So what would it?
It was definitely people pleasing on some level. It was really more about the boundaries. I didn't have any. I was working an insane number of hours. I did not have a personal life. I was single. It didn't really feel like there were other things that I should be working on. And the work never ended. I was a director at a Fortune 500, and I felt like I needed to be responsible for everything and everyone. And I did not stop. I was there not early in the morning because I'm not an early morning person. I was there late at night though. And I just was not taking care of myself. I wasn't prioritizing some of the things that I talk about with my clients now. So finding joy, finding little moments of micro moments of joy and bringing those into your life. I wasn't doing that. I
Mhm.
wasn't saying no. People would come to me with problems, or I would try to make sure that I dealt with everything on my plate. And by the end of the day, there was another plate load, right? And
Exactly.
instead of rationalizing, this is not going to end, it's still going to be here tomorrow, I tried to get as much done as I possibly could that night so that I could feel better going home.
Exactly. And what was the sensation in your body that you were experiencing pretty much in the midst of all of that?
I mentioned the chronic pain and brain fog and just fatigue. I was just always tired. I never had a lot of energy. It may have seemed like I did because I was always running all over the place, but I was really depleted and not excited about anything that I used to be excited about.
So what shifted? And how did you create that shift?
Well, what I think I came to the realization that I couldn't keep going and that I needed to get out and that there was no way. I, I started, I'm going to back up and say, part of me thought it was just the job itself. The environment had become toxic, and I recognized that clearly. And so I did start interviewing for other jobs and realized very quickly that it wasn't about getting another job. That would just bring me exactly back to the same place where I was. And that I really wasn't even capable at that point of showing up fully as myself in a new job. That I needed to take the time off. So that led to a lot of reflection and some creative problem solving to try to figure out how to do this. Because again, I was single, I had a mortgage. There was no way that I could stay in the Bay Area, which is where I was living, and not have a full-time job.
Right.
And so I ended up, it was funny because I had a big milestone birthday that year and I had a trip planned for October to Peru, a place that I had long wanted to go. And it was a sort of creative slash spiritual journey that I had signed up for.
Nice.
The closer I got to October, the more I started thinking, I might like it there. Maybe I could just, if I like it there, I could come back, I could sell my home, I could go. And then I thought, that's ridiculous. It's not a short flight from California to Peru. Basically, I ended up putting my house on the market and it sold in less than 6 days. And that was a sign to me that this was meant to happen.
Love it.
Also, my boss at my job was half Peruvian. And when I told him where I was going, he was really excited for me and invited me to come back anytime.
Nice.
So everything sort of lined up and let me feel a little bit better about just taking a jump off a cliff, which is what I was doing because I had no idea how I was going to land or where or what I was going to be doing.
Exactly. So before life got loud for you, right? What was the first whisper that told you that something needed to change?
I don't know if there was a whisper. I think that I was so immersed in what I was doing and in my habits and my patterns that it really had to get bad before I understood that I couldn't continue.
I hear that. So a lot of times I like to believe that life is happening, and this is where I go with my clients. As challenging as life gets, and it will always throw us curveballs, right? I like
Hmm.
to call them the roller coasters of life. I personally get green on a roller coaster. I don't know about you. When we're getting into those dips, right? I like to think that life is happening for us rather than to us. And the reason I say that is because there are always lessons to be learned. And
Hmm.
often when we get to the other side, it's greater than we ever thought it would be,
Hmm.
right? So
Absolutely.
it sounds to me like even though you had all of that going to Peru, it was a blessing in disguise for you. How so?
It wasn't even in disguise. It was absolutely a blessing. No, it's very clear to me that was the best decision that I have made ever in my lifetime.
Love it.
I ended up not staying in Peru. I stayed for about 4 months and then I moved to Ecuador and I bought a little adobe house in the mountains with banana
Oh,
trees and a gorgeous view. And then I ended up, after about a year and a half, moving to Portugal, where I sold my home. I bought a little tiny apartment in Portugal by the ocean and I renovated it and I learned Portuguese. And this was some of my journey learning the languages too, because I was
yeah.
studying Spanish and then I was studying Portuguese. And the whole thing, I call it a sabbatical, took 4 or 5 years. I actually ended up coming back to the States, going to Switzerland for sort of a different reason, and then coming back again. All of it was, especially the Peru, Ecuador, and Portugal part of it, was full of so many amazing experiences and people and reflection and opportunity. And I never would have encountered or experienced any of that had I just tried to power through the way that I was originally trying to do. And it also gave me the time and the space to well, to heal, but B, which took several years, but B, to really think more about what I wanted and how out of alignment I had been.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I talk about with clients every day is it's not just working hard that causes burnout. It's being out of alignment with who we are, with our
Absolutely.
goals, with our
Yeah.
values. And so many of us do that because we're so programmed to just do the thing and to do 150% and to put other things and people first. So,
Exactly. Self first, you give from the overflow, not the overwhelm, the
right.
overflow. It's been a day. So, what's small, Rachel? What's one small thing that you chose to start building the bridge from ordinary to extraordinary and bringing yourself back to homeostasis in a sense, in alignment?
I don't really do small.
I'm
No,
getting that. But
I
for the
what
list, they were going to do one thing. What was that thing that you did? I have an idea what it is, but I'd like to hear your take on it.
I think it's really recognizing my own truth. It's just listening to that voice inside because so many of us have that voice and we have intuition. And I know this is something you talk about a lot on your show. And yet, especially in Western culture, we are trained not to listen to it. There is a reason for that voice, and there is a reason for those feelings that we get in our body. And when we start listening to them, we can start getting back into alignment.
I love that. Absolutely. I like to also something that I'm hearing in your conversation as well is you made a decision. And if you take the word decision, right, it means to cut. You let go of what wasn't serving you any longer, and you decided you made a choice to move forward with your life, which is so commendable because so many people, let alone moving within their own country, let alone moving to a foreign country where you don't speak the language and decide to take it on. Kudos. I think that's awesome. But how exciting that must have been because I know every time I step out of my comfort zone, and do something unknown at first, and then I'm like, wow, this is the best thing I've ever done. And it just really stretches you, doesn't it?
It does. And I've learned so much about myself over the last few years. One of the things that I learned was that I have ADHD, among other forms of neurodivergence. And that part of me is the part that is always looking for new experiences, for new adventures. One of the things I love is new cultures and immersing myself in new cultures, which goes back to that childhood dream about learning the languages and being in the different countries.
I'm going to pause you for a second. For the listening audience who don't relate or don't know what neurodivergence is, would you give them a little explanation of that so this way there's an understanding in the conversation?
I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
So there's neurodiversity and neurodivergence. Neurodiversity just means
Mhm.
the natural state of lots of different brains and nervous systems and the way we all function. So just like diversity is, we are all diverse. Neurodiversity just has to do with the brain and the nervous system. Neurodivergence is a term that technically means different from the normal or the typical. I usually do this with air quotes with my fingers because every brain is different. No two brains are the same.
Okay.
So I don't actually believe in the concept of neurotypical and who decides what typical is anyway.
Absolutely.
But neurodivergence is often thought of in terms of specific traits that people have where they think differently, operate differently, feel differently, process information differently. And it could be things like ADHD, autism, high sensitivity, Tourette syndrome, bipolar disorder. There are many different kinds of conditions and traits that fall under the larger category, the bucket.
Absolutely. Thank you for doing that because I'm going to suggest that it's your superpower.
There's no question. It is absolutely my superpower.
It is.
And this is one of the things that I talk about a lot, and I've written about it. We all have strengths and we all have challenges. They're two sides of the same coin. You can't have
Exactly.
one without the other.
Exactly.
But as humans, we naturally gravitate towards emphasizing the challenges. Those are the things that are most on our minds, and they're the things that are obviously the hardest for us. When we can learn to recognize and embrace our strengths and our superpowers, it makes everything a little bit easier to handle and to manage. And we can really show up. It's awakening that potential, right? It's what your show is about. A lot of what's really interesting to me about a lot of neurodivergent people is we don't recognize our own strengths. We tend to think that the things that we can do well are things everybody can do and that we're just meant to struggle. And yet, there are so many gifts and superpowers associated with various kinds of neurodivergence. So,
I couldn't agree more. So, for somebody who in a listening audience who might be interested in or saying to themselves, I don't have a superpower, I don't even know what that is. And, yeah, and I talk about it every show. However, your perspective, what would you consider your superpower and how might you address the audience so they can tap into theirs?
so I think I have a couple. One of mine is communication. It's understanding what other people are trying to communicate and helping them do that more effectively. I think there are so many innate superpowers that come with, especially for people who are wired a little differently. And some of those include deep empathy, even if it shows up in a way that's different for different people. Strong intuition. Again, I know this is something that you talk about. We are all born with it. It can be very strong for people who are wired a little differently. Again, like the programming that I was talking about earlier, we are often programmed by our culture and our society to ignore that intuition. And yet, it is one of our superpowers. It is an inner knowing that something is going to happen or something is the right direction to go in, or it's an inner knowing without necessarily knowing how we know. One of the things that I see a lot is an ability to connect dots and to see several steps ahead and to know, for example, what kind of consequences a specific business decision might have. And connecting other kinds of dots and just seeing the connections between things. We tend to be able to do that very quickly and very well. Pardon?
We have that in common.
Yes.
Definitely.
There is another ability that is common among people I often work with that is being both big picture oriented and detail oriented at the same time.
Yeah.
A lot of people are really just one or the other, and that is their strength. But among many neurodivergent folks I work with, they can do both. Now, that also has challenges associated with it, but it is a fantastic pairing of abilities for so many different kinds of contexts. So, one example is somebody who manages projects, for example. You need to be able to see the bigger picture and how all of the pieces feed into that and how they are all interdependent. And you need to be detail oriented and be able to focus on the deliverables and the pieces of communication and what all of those individual pieces look like and what the people need to be able to deliver them. So,
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you. And just for the listening audience as well, all of Rachel's contact information will be in the show notes. So feel free to reach out to her. What is the best way of people getting in touch with you, Rachel? Do you have a quick link or something? I know we have what you sent me will be in the show notes, but
sure.
you want to give a quick.
The best two ways are rercoaching.com, that's my website, and Rachel Radway on LinkedIn. There are very few of us, and you will quickly discover who is the one that you're listening to now. So just R.E. Radway on LinkedIn.
I love that. So you definitely bring a Rachel, you definitely bring a gift to the world, and I'm so grateful for that and for being who you are. I always ask for a pearl, I call them pearls of wisdom, and I've been doing that for years. What is the one thing that just comes in the moment that you want to leave the listening audience with that you think would make a difference for them?
One of the most important things that I can think of and that I work with all of my clients on is finding what brings you joy. And it doesn't have to be, I know that you've had other guests who have talked about this too. It doesn't have to be something big. It doesn't have to be the thing you've always wanted to do. Micro moments of joy are so
Yeah.
important for raising our energy and making us smile or laugh. I often suggest that people find a short video clip of their favorite comedian, for example, and keep that handy on their computer, just so you can laugh for a few minutes when you really need it.
Yeah.
Or if you like doodling, keep a little tiny sketchbook nearby, or keep your favorite music around and do a little dance, or take a walk in nature. There are so many things that don't cost money, don't take time, and we need those breaks. Our brain needs them, our body needs them. They refuel us and they reset our energy. And they are just absolutely critical, especially today with everything that's going on in the world and the uncertainty and the chaos and a lot of people are struggling. And just making sure to give yourself that those moments of joy.
Absolutely.
We
Absolutely.
forget to do it. We let it go.
Absolutely. And I'm going to tag on to that if I may. Not just the acknowledge, it's also acknowledging the joy. So this
Hmm.
way, if you're a journal or such, if you go ahead and write it down, you can
Hmm.
look back on what that joy was and revisit that all the time as well. I'm a big, I never used to in past life, I never used to acknowledge myself. And
Hmm.
sometimes just acknowledging the fact that I created joy in my life today is huge. So what I heard in that is it's really an important reminder that wisdom doesn't necessarily come from having to figure it all out, rather from being willing to listen to what's sparking in your life. So thank you. That was great.
Absolutely.
Rach, this has been such a great honor and joy to have you here with us today. And thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. It certainly is a pleasure to have connected with you.
Oh, it was my pleasure, Karen. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I am grateful.
Uh, Rachel Radway, as I said, all of her contact information will be in the show notes. Thank you for your willingness to share your journey with us because your story is a powerful reminder that transformation doesn't happen all at once. It begins with the moment we become aware and the choices we make, and continues with our being bold, brave and badassy choices along the way that really makes us or creates the becoming of who we are today. So, to everyone listening, remember this: the bridge from ordinary to extraordinary is built with small steps of change and big leaps of faith. So, you're more powerful than you know. So, keep showing up, keep rising, and keep awakening your potential. And here's what I want you to carry away from this today. Right? It's your choice, your life. Create joy that's going to resonate and make a difference in not just your life, but those around you. So DM me the word bridge, and I'll send you the questions that I use to shift in real time. And I'll reach out to Rachel. I'm sure she will as well. And again, bridge or visit me at tranquilsolutions.com. And I'm the one that responds to you. Until next time, stay sassy, stay classy, and keep being your bold, badassy selves. Bye for now.